Radio Telefisher, and you're watching RTE 1.
Hello and welcome to EcoEye. Now, I was never a star pupil at school, but there are subjects being taught today that everyone can learn from. It's great to be out in the fresh air, but do we take it for granted? And we look at a new product that's made from our own green waste. What lessons can our children learn from our attitudes towards the environment? It's a mixed message. They see a lack of care or awareness. They see a lot of destruction. But they also see positive signs and commitment to improve the damage that has already taken place. Which is the stronger influence? After all, it's their future environment that's at stake. So what are schools teaching them? Our environmental studies seem to be as important as the other subjects.
The environment is something that impacts all our lives in every way, really. So it should be taught in that way in schools. Schools can foster a good environmental culture by getting involved in environmental issues amongst schools. Some who are avid supporters of environmental studies very much encourage their students to take part in all of the outlets, I suppose, for their interest. Other schools maybe haven't started yet.
Environmental studies are included in primary and post-primary education, but many schools supplement them with projects from other organisations which provide a vital and energetic approach to studying the environment. One of the most recognised is the Green School programme.
The Green Schools programme has grown very, very rapidly over the last 9 years. It's been a huge success story. There's four main things to it. It's an environmental education programme, it's an award scheme, it's a whole school programme, and it's also involves the wider community, and it's a long-term programme.
The Green Schools programme was devised by a non-profit organisation promoting sustainable development worldwide called the Foundation for Environmental Education, or FEE. It started in 1994 and has over 14,000 participants. The scheme is operated in Ireland by An Taisce. Its aim is to encourage and reward long-term school projects that promote and protect the environment.
There are approximately 14,300 schools in 37 countries undertaking green schools. Roughly 2,050 of those are in Ireland, so we're punching well above our weight there. I think there's roughly 5,000 schools have flags. We have 651 flags in the country, so we can see from the standard of work that comes in to us for verification and for validation as regards flags that it is very, very, very high.
In order for a school to gain green flag recognition, they must follow a 7-step programme. This first step of the programme is to form a committee. Now, the committee is made up of parents, children and teachers that work in the school. When the committee is formed, the committee carry out an environmental review.
Getting a coveted green flag takes commitment and work. The school devises a plan that identifies areas of action and improvement. It sets up its own code and rules to realise these targets. When the school successfully implements these rules, it receives its very own green flag.
This is our green flag.
But we had to work hard to get it.
But it was worth it, and I'm very proud.
Any school can get a green flag if they try their best and recycle. It's really important to keep recycling and stop the pollution and keep our world clean.
The Green School programme is really popular in primary and post-primary schools.
Well, most people think of environmental education as just recycling aluminium cans and plastic bottles, but it means much more. It's all about social and community awareness in the environment. It's all about cultural and aesthetic awareness. Environmental education can't be a preachy thing. You can't teach it with chalk and talk. Students at that age group have to be actively involved. They have to be actively on committee. They have to be participating. They have to feel they have to have an ownership of the programme. Regular teaching methodologies just wouldn't work in second level.
Well, I think students' attitude towards the environment in this school is growing and growing every day. I think they're more aware of the environment around them, and with the recycling in the school, they're becoming more aware of everything around them, really. And within time, I think we'll be totally focused on the environment.
Participating with teachers and parents is better because we're actually doing the work and you're becoming more confident and getting to know teachers as well, not just being told what to do but voluntarily doing what you want to try and get the green flag.
It's a huge learning curve from the point of view of self-confidence. The students become so confident through participation in the programme. They learn the workings of the committee. They learn responsibility. They have a pride of place, maybe for the first time. So I would hope that they would bring that learning back home into their own families and into their own homes and into the wider community.
After all this investment in the final years of post-primary schools, does the pressure of exams compromise environmental studies?
Students at post-primary schools are definitely under more pressure because of the high stakes leaving certificate exam that they face in a number of subjects. But we mustn't forget that many students now take transition year between junior cycle and leaving certificate, and this gives them the opportunity to study environmental issues among a myriad of other areas. And significantly, those studying leaving certificate geography now have the opportunity of taking an environmental issue as part of their geographical investigation. This provides them with the opportunity within a high stakes point system for leaving certificate to study environmental issues and to keep environmental education at the forefront.
Brenda?
So what happens to the students who don't study geography or science? At a critical stage in their education, what message is this sending? A very clear one, that environmental studies is not one of the key subjects.
I think in our school there is a lot done to teach us about the environment, but I don't think there is in every school, because not every school has the teachers that we have and not every school has the students that are willing to learn about the environment. But I think in time that will change and there will be more learnt in school about the environment.
Our schools do teach environmental studies. What often makes them very vibrant and relevant to pupils are projects like the Green Schools programme. If our schools are to continue acting as catalysts for good environmental culture, then the environment should continue to have a growing role in education. In Ireland, we are lucky. We have good clean air. The winds blowing from the Atlantic help greatly. Our rainfall washes out the dirt and dust particles, and we've no long history of industrialisation. All these factors help maintain good air quality. We have had problems in the past. Some parts of Ireland, our cities, have a history of smogs from the burning of coal fires that, combined with the use of leaded petrol, made wintertime hazardous for many.
We banned bituminous coal and found that after that, the mortality or death rate from common diseases such as bronchitis and emphysema, such as heart attacks, dramatically reduced. There was a 15% reduction in respiratory deaths every year since the ban, and a 10% reduction in cardiovascular mortality.
We now have another threat to our health from air pollution, but unlike the smogs of the 70s, this one is invisible. Tiny particles so small we can't see them or even feel them. They range in size from particulates about the size of a pollen grain, called PM10s, to tiny PM2.5s, and these can carry any number of toxic chemicals.
The main pollutants we find are nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. Particulate matter is tiny particles which are light enough to be suspended in the air and travel some distances. these can be breathed into the lungs, and therefore the particles themselves are irritant. Sometimes they have chemicals attached to them which can be even irritant or possibly dangerous to health, and this would be a major source of air pollution.
Quite apart from the actual chemical constituents, the very existence of particles, the size of them, have an effect on us. A small particle will go in and stay in your lung. And then, of course, what it consists of is going to be important, because if it is a carcinogen, it could in time cause a cancer. If it's an irritant gas, it might make you wheeze or cough or have phlegm.
Research about fine particulate matter is ongoing, and it's now recognised to be such a threat to our well-being that new EU legislation has been introduced with the aim of cleaning our air of these dangerous particulates.
On average across the European region, we are all losing somewhere in the region of 9 months of life because of particulate pollution. So it's an issue that affects all of us. It's an issue we should all be concerned about. It's an issue that governments need to be aware of. If we look at the World Health Organization research, it clearly shows that on an annual basis it's costing the citizens of Europe somewhere in the region of 168 billion euro in terms of mortality and loss of economic growth, and in terms of productivity. That doesn't include the actual healthcare cost which is associated with particulate pollution, which runs somewhere in the order of 30 billion euro per year across the European region.
Not all of Ireland is seriously affected. It's our urban areas and main traffic routes that are the black spots.
Our research has shown that typically urban levels of particulate are approximately 4 times greater than in rural areas, and at roadside the levels will be 6 times greater than typical rural conditions.
Within the city, the air quality varies greatly. Dublin City Council are constantly monitoring this, and certain areas are more at risk than others. Martin showed me a number of Dublin City Council monitoring stations.
Well, as you can see, Duncan, Rathmines, it's a typical urban village. Here we've got people living, shopping, going to school, and of course travelling through the area. So it's a very good representative area, and of course in terms of air pollution it's very important we monitor in somewhere that's very representative of the type of exposure that people have to these pollutants.
Right.
We have a monitoring station which is just about 100 metres up the road here. It's a location that we share with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Right, okay.
And it gives us a very good representative picture of what's happening here on the main street, but also we've got people living quite close to the monitoring area, so it's very good representation of what exactly they're exposed to.
Right, and is this traffic one of the big causes?
It certainly would be, yes.
The pollutants of most concern result from traffic. Fossil fuel combustion from petrol and diesel are the principal source of classic primary air pollutants, but there are other sources of air pollution.
Well, as you can see, Dublin, on sites like this, there's a lot of movement on and off the site of dusty material. There's dusty material stored on site, and there can be other activities such as rock crushing going on the site as well. So all of these have the potential to cause pollution.
And how does it affect our health?
Well, in terms of affecting our health, particularly in causing localised problems, it's obviously an issue for the workers on site, but also for residents in the area, because this particular pollution can add to the general overall pollution levels in the area. But there are things that can be done about it. It requires a good management regime on site. For instance, wheel washing at the entrance to the site, covering and the damping down materials on the site, and general overall good housekeeping in relation to how the site is operated.
The worst area was one sited at the very heart of Dublin, where people are constantly in contact with a dangerous level of air pollution all along the quays.
So, what are you monitoring here, Martin?
Well, here at this location we're monitoring for 6 pollutants: particulate, lead, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, benzene and carbon monoxide. As you can see from the area, it's very heavily trafficked. We've lots of public transport, lots of heavy goods vehicles as well as private cars. There's been a big initiative in recent years to bring people back into the city. You can see it along the quayside. There's lots of apartments, there's lots of people who have come back to live in the city. So we've got them living cheek by jowl with a very heavy traffic roadside. So obviously we need to be concerned about that.
A lot of engineering and serious investment went into the port tunnel. It will reduce the air pollution from heavy goods traffic in the city centre of Dublin by dispersing the pollution to the outskirts of the city. The problem and danger of air pollution is one that we could become complacent about. Higher EU regulations will be a challenge.
There is a general strategy from the European Commission called the Clean Air for Europe initiative, or CAFE as it's called, and that brings on board a whole range of initiatives, both in terms of economic issues but also in terms of legislation. In terms of what we're trying to achieve here in Ireland in relation to this, we've got quite stringent air quality standards to meet. We're doing quite well in terms of meeting those standards, but we still have challenges ahead of us, particularly now in the next 5 years.
Heavy traffic is the big issue, is it?
Certainly traffic is the issue we need to be most concerned about. There are a range of sources of particulate, but certainly in terms of hitting the priorities, the transport sector is the one that we need to hit in coming years.
Is bralum full of mori. Fair and shot against plastic and shot. Barnum veg over the Guardian, not the wrong. Shooter school got law. Moving society.
Gardening is a rewarding activity. Whether growing fruit and vegetables or creating a pleasant outdoor space, we invest a lot of time and effort in making our gardens. We generate lots of this green waste in Ireland today, not just in our home gardens, but also in our workplaces, sports complexes, parks, everywhere. Most of this green waste up till now has been going to landfill.
I think it's appalling that people put green into landfill. Our green waste is a valuable commodity and it should be turned into products.
A very good way to use household green waste like this is to compost it. The fact is that so much of household waste is suitable for composting. It's a great incentive for anyone with a bit of space to consider some home recycling.
So Ciara, what do you know about composting?
A reasonable amount, because my mum composts religiously. I understand about the outdoor stuff, the grass clippings and things like that. But what about indoors? Can you compost any of your household waste?
Almost all of the uncooked kitchen waste can go into your composter. Not just the predictable things like vegetables and that kind of thing, but tea bags, coffee grounds, even thin cardboard like the cereal packets, and lots of weird and wonderful things like pet hair, even human hair can go in. Your vacuum cleaner contents.
I just empty it straight in?
Yeah.
Any pile of organic matter will eventually rot, but a well-chosen site can speed up the process.
Where would be the best place to put it in the garden?
Very important that it goes on the ground. It must have contact with the soil because the material's got to break down into the soil, and a lot of the creepy crawlies that are inside, they're going to be coming up from the soil.
Ciara will use her kitchen scraps, so she has it near to her back door, sheltered by a wall. Here the sun will help maintain a good temperature for the many hundreds of different organisms, like bacteria, fungi, worms and insects, to break down all her garden and kitchen waste. Your compost will need a proper ratio of carbon-rich materials called browns, like dried leaves, cardboard and woody materials, and nitrogen-rich materials called greens, like grass cuttings, hedge trimmings and kitchen waste. The ideal ratio is 4 parts brown to 1 part green. Too much carbon will slow down the process, while too much nitrogen can cause bad odour. Layering and mixing helps the whole process. This needs to be maintained so the organisms can do their work efficiently. It will take about a year before you can harvest your first homemade chemical-free compost.
So Ciara, how are you getting on?
It's incredible actually the difference. I can't believe how easy we made the transition from not composting to doing it. The kids are fantastic. They now know any sort of organic material, banana skins, apple butts, all that stuff goes into the caddy. Then, you know, every evening you just bring it out straight into the compost bin. And our grey bin is now only going out once a fortnight.
So there's been a big reduction in
huge reduction.
If you're not interested in composting, there are green waste depots like this one coming on stream where you can bring all your green waste and it will be recycled properly.
There's definitely been a change in people's mindsets recently. We're noticing more and more people coming in here with the material. The pay-by-weight thing has a lot to do with that. People are finding it's more eco-friendly and economically viable to bring the material somewhere like this.
Maybe more Irish companies could take it on board, turn it into something that everyone can use, because when this is all broken down, there's nothing better for the environment than putting back in what you took out in the first place.
The quantities of green waste are growing, and one company has addressed the need to produce a commodity from this resource.
What we make here are products for the gardening industry. The pressure for recycling, the increasing volumes of material that are becoming available, led us to have a look and see whether there were other materials that we could use in conjunction with peat. What we do here is the same science, the same activity as people would do at home in their own gardens. Obviously we do it on a much larger scale here on the site in Kilbury.
This is a compost, a gigantic high-tech compost. Shredded green waste is brought from recycling centres all over Leinster and laid out in this specially designed forecourt in long piles called windrows. These windrows are regularly aerated by this special machine that turns over the green waste as it composts. That steam generated from heat within the piles, a good sign that the microorganisms are thriving and working away. Any excess water from the site drains away to these lagoons and is reused if needed to maintain the ideal moist habitat for the microorganisms to turn the green waste into compost.
We operate on the site here under a waste licence from the EPA. We are very keen that the facility here runs in accordance with best international practice. So the conditions of those licences and our own desire is to minimise any impact on the surrounding environment through the emission of odours, through the release of any leachate into the surrounding environment.
Regular monitoring of the windrows shows just how the composting is progressing. Back at Bordnamona's labs, this information is assessed to maintain this healthy natural process.
Because we are doing it on a large scale, we cannot afford to have any problems later on. So it's very, very important that we start with the right ingredients and mix in the right ratio. And as the composting process goes on, we do need oxygen, we do need moisture content. So these things have to be monitored regularly during the composting process.
Through our science and research, we've managed to reduce the composting cycle down to about 10 or 12 weeks. So what we're looking at here, Duncan, we're probably halfway through the composting cycle. This here is what was grass clippings, maybe some prunings from street trees, some material that landscape contractors might have brought to some of the sites. And as you can see, it's well through the composting cycle at this stage. And it's nice fibril material. So a number of weeks, that will be ready for bagging off.
Fantastic.
You can develop a whole range of products, and I think that at the moment we are really scratching the surface. As far as Bordnamona is concerned, we are doing it in one particular area, but there is a potential for a whole range of products that could be produced.
Seeing the byproducts of our gardens and green areas being used to make valuable commodities is encouraging. It's good to know that the green waste we recycle is going to good use, and even better if it's creating businesses and products within Ireland. Hopefully other areas will develop along these lines to use up all the resources we can recycle.
When you're travelling short distances, why not give yourself a little extra time to walk or cycle? It's less stressful, it's healthy exercise, and it'll save you money. But it also helps reduce traffic congestion, road accidents, and CO2 emissions. And the rain is no excuse.
In the next programme, we uncover the household hazards we bring into our homes. We visit Youghal and meet a group of people who've embraced a new perspective. safeguarding our water and how we can all help, and more eco tips from Tanya. See you then.